Welcome to Charts Today, Asia Pacific. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 18th of October, comes to you from London. We start by looking at the markets generally down. We can just see the screen of red, so that's just reflecting the picture. The dollar actually looking stronger, having had a strong rise yesterday, and so now short-term bullish, unwinding some of these targets to the downside, and now looking back at the upside targets. So dollar strength back to a feature of strength there. Fed comments yesterday helping there. Euro sinking lower. Japanese yen, we're seeing the dollar is actually down a little bit, but again, it's bullish on all three time frames. The sterling chart falling away quite heavily. That's to do more with dollar strength, but also Brexit jitters still having an impact there. Against the euro, we're seeing sterling relatively flat, and against the Swiss franc, relatively flat as well. And against the Aussie dollar sinking lower, Aussie dollar strengthening on job numbers. So we're seeing short-term weakness there for sterling against the dollar. Bitcoin is fairly flat. Last few days has barely moved. Still bearish in the medium and short long-term charts. Short-term really hard to call, but little action there. US markets ended fairly flat yesterday. Climbed but receded towards the end. So the Nasdaq also fairly flat. After a strong showing the day before, we're down slightly. The Dow was down 1/3%, and the Russell index, the broader base market, down nearly 0.5%. Seeing the futures down significantly this morning in the US. The S&P future down 0.5%, and the Nasdaq E-mini down nearly 2/3%. So it does suggest more turmoil in the UK market. You're seeing the UK future down slightly, and the charts are fairly bearish here, and the DAX future down 1/3%. Looking at the cash markets, the FTSE looking pretty bearish, still below the cloud on all three time frames now, and mid caps also similarly looking bearish. Not quite as bearish on the long term chart, and less clear downside targets, but still bearish. The DAX in Germany also now bearish on all three time frames. The CAC Quarante, this is, remember, my weekly long term, daily medium term, and short term 60-minute chart. The CAC Quarante is also looking bearish. Overnight, we saw Tokyo down 0.6%, the Hang Seng down 0.75%, and China, which has been our major concern, down a further 2.4%. So we're seeing China just sinking lower and lower, down some 25% since this year. So really very clearly in a bear market, making new 4-year lows in China. So that's bad news, and we've got these big downside targets to play for. So it's not a pretty picture at all. And Chinese stocks have been our main concern for global equities. The Sensex 1% lower, so we're seeing that as well. The Aussie market was actually just slightly up. Brent crude sitting at $80.02. So we are just short-term bearish, just struggling to stay above the cloud there. And WTI also short-term bearish, activating a downside target of 65%. So we are seeing a little bit of an unwinding of the crude price. US nat gas sitting at 329 has held up fairly well over the last few weeks. Taking a look at gold, we see gold sitting back at $1,219, just ticking to short-term bearish. We do have upside targets here, so one to watch there. And silver also just ticking to short-term bearish below the cloud. US 10-year yields sitting at 3.21%, so did see a jump yesterday on those Fed comments. Still, yields holding strong, and German bonds weaker this morning, turning bearish again on the short term, taking us turning bearish but still bullish on the short term chart. Taking a look at the stocks, we'll start by just looking at where we are in the markets. Asia, we saw yesterday most European markets down around 0.5%. US markets were fairly flat, having given up most of the gains through the day. Asia, we're seeing the Nikkei down 0.8%. Hang Seng we've talked about. China we've talked about as well. We're seeing the Indian market down 1 and 1.2%. Australia, one of the bright spots up, the only market really in Asia Pacific up. Other markets, um, the um, the COPSI in Korea down 8.86%, Taiwan down 0.3%. So we are seeing quite big moves. Jakarta down 2/3%. Taking a look at the big moves on the Nasdaq yesterday, it's the bellwethers really. Apple ended up down 0.43%, still looking pretty strong. So US tech still is the thing holding the market up really, and Amazon also just holding its trend. Google, we still have concerns about. They were down 0.5%, but it's this a fact that they're below the cloud. All of this data on this screen is Yahoo data from Yahoo Finance. So it allows me to look at the market. Facebook was actually up 0.4%, but still looking very bearish there and has a lot of work to do. Seeing the on-balance volume falling and the relative chart to the Dow, we're down 16% on the year. Taking a look at some of the others, Tesla down 1.73%, so they underperform the market. 250 is the critical level there, and Netflix were actually up 5% on stronger viewing figures. Microsoft, one of the bellwethers really for the US market, down 0.25%. So we're just seeing really US stocks fairly mixed but holding on. Taking a look at the Aussie market, best performers were Afterpay Touch Group, uh, just really actually just finding support on the cloud on the medium term chart. Looking at Vocus Group, looking to make new highs here, new 2 year highs really, or 1 year high, and starting to come through on the long term chart. On balance volume climbing, and the relative strength real turnaround. So there are stocks out there. It's just a case of sticking with the ones that are looking good from a chart perspective. Bellamy's down 7%, not looking so good, just starting to turn bearish in the long-term chart. Oroka also looking bad. We're seeing really a lot of stocks down 5, 4, 3, 2%, even though the market was flat. It was just these big drivers that actually pushed us higher. Taking a look at Chinese equities, we see here had just how bad the situation is. Only two stocks up, the rest down, and some of them down very significantly indeed. If we just click on this again, all from Yahoo, this data. PetroChina down 7%. I mean, these are massive companies down, falling quite significantly. China Communications also down 7%. So we're just seeing Chinese equities really on the verge of meltdown quite significantly. Hong Kong, not so bad. We are seeing some Swire Pacific, for example, up 1.74%, but still looking like we're just turning bearish on these charts. Taking a look at the worst performers in Hong Kong, again, China Petroleum showing through there. Kind of actually holding on, but down this morning. A lot of counter trend moves going on here. China Shenzhou Energy bearish on that medium term chart. Just seeing the underperformance there as well. Taking a quick look at India. India, we're seeing again not many stocks up in the 50 here, and if we look at the ones that are really struggling, India Bulls Housing down 13%, just really falling off a cliff. Fallen from 1400 a couple of months ago to 788, nearly halved. And once we end that bearish territory, it's just a case of how low we can go. 5%, 4% lower on the targets. Those targets have been in place for some time. This one here, 788, was given way back in August. So we're seeing really just meltdown on that sort of stocks as well. And then if we look at the best looking stocks in India, Infosys was up in the leaders yesterday, still looking really good, trends all intact. So it's just a case of finding that 32% outperformance on the Dow Jones Index this year. Last, we'll look at Japan. Japan not faring as bad, quite a few stocks up. Family Mart, OG Holdings, Tokyo Dome Corporation, we're all seeing sort of 2% gains there, but again, go to the worst performers. Yuka's Electric down 7%. Shell actually still looking good on the trend, but falling some 5%, just selling off there. So we are seeing across the board in Asia quite big sells, the Aussie market really being the bright spot today. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.